All right, and shalom, everybody. So real quick, I just want to make sure, can everybody hear me in the chat? Can everybody hear me in the chat? If you can hear me, just put an I. Please put an I in the chat if you can hear me. All right, cool. So we good. All right, so shalom once again, everybody. So my name is Deacon Ernest James, and I'm with the King James Bible University, coming out of Durham, North Carolina. And today's teaching that I will be bringing forth is entitled, The Glory of Man. What does it profit? So, today, my brothers and sisters, today's teaching, we're going to be looking at the glory of man, which we know man is flesh, and flesh is anything that is carnal. It is anything that is of the world. See, being in flesh represents our mortality, because we all know that flesh is going to die, and all flesh is going to come to an end, because these bodies, these vessels, these coats of skin that we are in are only temporary vessels that's housing the very spirit that's within us, and a covering for the seed that was planted within us. So we know man, who is mortal, is temporary. Why? Because we all have one born date and we all have one death date when this life comes to an end. When it comes to an end. So when it comes to the glory of man, we must understand that anything that we do according to the flesh, such as seeking our own power, seeking our own fame, seeking our own honor, seeking our own praise, seeking to magnify ourselves, seeking our own ambitions, seeking to receive admiration, seeking to be respected and honored, to be worshiped and praised, seeking to be exalted in this life. These are all things that man seeks, that man glorifies himself in his own carnal fleshly works. But guess what? All of these things are according to the flesh. So we must understand that any work that we do according to the flesh, according to our own power and our own might that we seek in this life, all that stuff is going to come to an end. Because in the end, it's all vanity. It's all worthlessness. It means nothing. See, all those things, it won't get us anywhere in the next life to come. It won't profit anything because it's all going to the grave. Because man's glory can only get you but so far. It can only get you what you want, what you seek, and what you desire out of this life. Whatever the flesh finds pleasure in. But then if we find pleasure in all these things, and we seeking all these things of the world, we seeking all these things to glorify ourselves in, and that's where our focus is. So the question is, after all that is over, after all that ends, then what? What are we going to do? See, this is the question that we have to ask ourselves, providing we spending our entire lives seeking to magnify and glorify our flesh and uplift ourselves in the things of the world, seeking the peace and prosperity of this life. Then what are we going to do when this temporary life comes to an end? What are we going to do when we take our very last breath? When we have to stand before God and answer for everything that we done in this life? And we ain't did nothing but put in time, effort, and everything that we want to do here. What are we going to do when we stand before him? See, when we sat there and glorified ourselves in our own works, instead of seeking the glory of God, the kingdom of God and his righteousness, what are we going to do if we sat there and spent our whole entire lives in temporary satisfactions? And that's been our focus. Only to sit there and lose it all in the end. Not understanding nor recognizing the reason we were placed in the flesh in the first place. So this is something that we have to be able to answer within ourselves. The glory of man. What profit is it? What benefit is it? So as we go into this lesson, we want to understand man's glory. This is something that comes from ourselves and our own works. But man, who is male and female, is nothing but flesh. Man is nothing but dust of the ground. So we have to see it for what it actually is. Man is nothing but flesh. So we need to understand our mortality, how ourselves and our lives here in this world is temporary. We're limited. And we're subject to death. See, when we start to understand these things, this will help us understand the complete disadvantage it brings to trust in our own fleshly glory. So now we're going to go ahead and get started in this lesson. So we're going to start right here in Genesis. We're going to start right here in Genesis chapter 6. And we're going to hit verse 3. And it tells us, Genesis chapter 6 and verse 3. And it says, and the Spirit of God said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for the reason of that he also is flesh. So that's key. Yet his days shall be 120 years. So this right here from the jump, we can clearly see that our time in this world is limited. Why? Because we're flesh. That's why he told us. He's not going to strive with man. He's not going to strive with flesh. For he is also flesh. Our time in this world is limited. We're flesh. This is clearly letting us know what we are. Meaning all of us here will not pass by these boundaries. Where it says his days shall be 120 years. We're not going to pass by that. But even though our days are limited to 120 years, it does not mean that we are actually going to reach that. See, this is just letting us know that this is our boundary, our limit. We are not going to pass by that period of time that is given unto us. So let's go over here to Job. Job chapter 14. We're going to hit Job chapter 14. And we're going to hit verse 5. Job chapter 14 and verse 5. And it tells us, seeing his days are determined. So his days are weighed and measured. The number of his months are with thee. Thou has appointed his bounds, so his limits, that he cannot pass. So he's letting us know that our days are determined. It's weighed in the balance. We cannot pass by our bounds that are set. But this is why even a lot of us can have the problem. Why? Because we don't want to actually accept our mortality. See, what we want to do, we want to go beyond what was actually given unto us. We want to go outside of that. That's why you have people who've sat there and try to come up with ways to try to figure out how to make this flesh live longer, trying to sit there and preserve flesh. See, we get into doing all these different things, such as doing these cosmetic changes to our bodies and to ourselves, doing these plastic surgeries, these facelifts, getting these body enhancements done. These are the things we do because we thinking if we do those things, we can preserve flesh. How are we going to preserve flesh? He already told us. His days are determined. Thou has appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. It don't matter what you do. You're not going to preserve your flesh. But these are the things we like to do. We are not going to be able to keep ourselves from facing death. That is going to happen. But people try to save flesh because we trying to glorify something that was not meant to be preserved. See, you even have men and women. We sit there and we like to, when we get to a certain age, we want to put stuff in our hair to keep our hair black because we don't want our gray hairs to show. We become ashamed of looking old because we don't want to look old. Not understanding that those grays show a sign of wisdom with the aged. But we rather hide that because we think, oh well, if I put this little Beijing, I think it's called Beijing. I don't know. If it ain't Beijing, maybe somebody can correct me in the chat. But I think it's called Beijing. That black stuff we want to put in our hair. We sit there and be like, well, if I put this in my hair, maybe I can stay young. But you still old. we still gonna grow old and pass away. We can't change that. We cannot change these things. But we don't want to get old. We want to hide the fact that our flesh is going to eventually wither away. We do all these things to make ourselves feel like we're going to stay young forever. And that's not the case. See, you even have these scientists, which we know science is a bunch of just vain babbling. It's foolishness. But you have scientists who have came up with this practice that they call cryonics. Now, I don't know if anybody has ever heard of cryonics, but cryonics is basically when they sitting there, they taking dead people. They're taking people who've passed away. Now, anybody who hasn't heard of cryonics, see, I got a video on it and I'm gonna show the video because I had heard about it before. Because I know, because I remember Elder mentioning something on it, but I'm going to actually show the video on it, on what it actually is, because I had to look it up and find out what the name of it was. But anyways, cryonics is where you have scientists that's taking dead people who have already passed away. They taking dead people and taking their brains, or even freezing their brains or their entire bodies. They freeze these corpses in these huge refrigerators that they can place a body in, hoping that one day that they can bring these people back to life and revive their body. That's cryonics. This is literally, scientists are doing these things. This is what they're getting into. And it's craziness. So, matter of fact, so yeah, I'm gonna show the video on that because I want everybody to see exactly what this is. So let me pull that up. Let me see if I can get it up. All right. Let me see here. Yeah. I'm gonna play a little bit of this video right here so we can see it. Let me see. Let me mute myself.
Do you have a refrigerator in your home? And what do you refrigerate? Fruits, vegetables, and other edible stuff? Now imagine a world where people are being frozen with the hope of being brought back to life in the future. Sounds like science fiction, huh? This is no fiction, but a new reality of our times. With the help of technology, human bodies are being frozen with the hope of revival and being brought back to life in the future. Now, frozen means what? And who can be frozen? When we say frozen, we are talking about people who have been legally declared dead. But how can someone who's dead be brought back to life? That's where cryonics comes in. A technique that stores human bodies at very low temperatures and keeps the possibility alive of their revival someday. The idea is to freeze someone who has died from a disease that's currently incurable and then thaw them when a cure is found. This is called cryonic suspension. It is illegal to perform cryonic suspension on someone who is still alive.
So we all seen that. we all seen the video. That's what they talking about. That's cryonic. This is what they're talking about. Freezing these corpses, these dead people, and then hoping that they're going to be able to revive these dead people and bring them back to life one day. It's foolishness. But this is what people are getting into. And people holding to it, literally. When we already see that the flesh is going to pass away. And matter of fact, he even tell us right here, which this is showing how crazy this is when we get into stuff like this. Because he tell us, when we go to Hebrews chapter 9, we're going to look at something. In Hebrews chapter 9 and verse 27, he tell us simple, plain, clear as day right here. Hebrews chapter 9 verse 27, he said, and as it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this is the judgment. So this right here is clearly letting us know that we are only going to die once, because it's appointed. It's ordained unto men once to die. We only get one life to live in this very life that we have right now. And after this is the judgment. Those doctrines and teachings based on what we was following. We either going to receive eternal life or eternal death. It's literally that simple. Because we only going to die once. But you have people that are paying money to get their bodies frozen. Literally, this is what people are doing. Like, y'all can go back and look it up for yourselves. Look it up. You have people that are literally paying money, sitting there spending thousands of dollars, even hundreds of thousands of dollars on a process to preserve their bodies. I think it was like, to sit there and preserve your entire body, it was like $200,000. $200,000. That's crazy. Believing that if their flesh, it's ridiculous. Literally believing that if their flesh gets preserved and frozen after they die, believing that that life is in the flesh, hoping that one day that they gonna come back to life. That they gonna be revived back to life. See, people that believe this, they seeking immortality from flesh. It's crazy. You seeking immortality in the flesh. This is craziness. But it's all vain. But all of this shows you how we get caught up in these fleshly mindsets that we get so caught up ourselves in. These are the things that we'll do and believe anything to keep ourselves in flesh. To hold on to our flesh, when JEHOVAH already declared to us from the beginning that the days of man are numbered. He declared this to us from the beginning. So, but we're going to see this over in Ecclesiastes. He going to tell us some more on it. We're going to go over here. We're going to go over here. Exactly the point. No one can ask for their money back. You're dead. But it's crazy. But he tell us in Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 7. He says what? Then shall the dust return unto the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God, who gave it. So once our flesh dies, because it's only appointed for man once to die. So once that happens, once our flesh dies, that's it. Once that flesh expires, that is it. No flesh is coming back to life. See, once that spirit leaves that body, that's it. That flesh is not coming back to life. So this is the thing. So let's say that people did preserve their flesh, freezing their bodies in this cryonic stuff. So let's say that people sat there and did that. Then the question is this: then how are you gonna actually come back to life without the spirit? Once the spirit done left the body, how you gonna bring the flesh back to life and the spirit is gone? See, we have to understand it's the spirit that gives us life, because without the spirit, the body is dead. Because we can even see this over here in James. He tells us this when we go to James. Let's go over here to James chapter 2. We're going to hit James chapter 2 and we're going to hit verse 26 up to the comma. So that's James chapter 2, 26a. It says, for as the body without the spirit is dead. So he's letting us know. So without the spirit, we're dead. We're separated. We're just a corpse. We're just a dead body. You can't be living without the spirit. Let's go to Genesis. Wait. Yeah, I don't want to mess. Yeah. Let me just scroll up. We're going to hit Genesis chapter 2 and verse 7. He tells us something. Genesis chapter 2, verse 7. And it says, and the Lord God, the Spirit of God, formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So it's the spirit that makes us living. But once you yield up the ghost, meaning that spirit, once that spirit within the flesh leaves, then our bodies are dead. That's it. We're done. It ain't no coming back after that. So how is it possible? Remember, these are scientists. They are intelligent and worldly knowledge. They have degrees in this stuff, but cannot understand these simple things. How is it possible to preserve the flesh? This is what these people fail to recognize and understand. How you going to preserve the flesh and the spirit is gone? See, I mean, what are we going to bring back? You going to bring back a dead corpse? What? It's going to be zombies? You going to be a walking dead? How can you see? We have to understand that we didn't give ourselves life. JEHOVAH gave us a spirit and that breath of life. So how can man say that he's going to bring back something that's not his to give? Because man didn't give you a spirit. JEHOVAH gave us a spirit. JEHOVAH gave us life. So how can man say, oh, we're going to freeze this body and revive it? How you going to revive something that you didn't give? How can that happen? Shoot, we don't even have the power ourselves to retain the spirit within us. But you say you're going to revive somebody else? What sense does this make? Let's go over here to Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes chapter 8. Ecclesiastes chapter 8. And we're going to hit verse 8. Ecclesiastes chapter 8 and verse 8. It tells us, it says, there is no man, there is no male or female, there is no flesh that have power over the spirit to retain the spirit. That's a full thought. Neither have he power in the day of death. That's all we need right there. So nobody, no male, no female, no flesh has power over the spirit to retain it, because you didn't give it. How are you going to retain something that you didn't give? JEHOVAH gave it. So when he takes it back, then our flesh is done. See, we don't have power over life and death. That's only in the Spirit of God's power. It's in his hand. So how are people going to sit there and let these dumb, foolish, scientific folks tell you that they're going to revive your body after they done froze it in some dang refrigerator? How do we sit there and fall for craziness like this? All because we want to preserve some flesh. All because we want our flesh to live forever. When they can't even bring back the spirit that was given to them by God. They don't even have the power to retain their own spirit. When they're alive themselves, they can't even retain their own spirit, let alone being dead. See, he can take it. JEHOVAH can take it whenever he decides to. Whenever that time comes for that flesh to aspire. But somehow we done got so smart, we done got so intelligent, we done came up with all this stuff, such as this. And it's 100% stupidity. Why? Because we want eternal glory in our flesh. Really think about how that sounds. We want our flesh to be preserved forever. We want eternal glory in flesh. So because of that, we think we can supersede the laws of the Most High God and what he has already declared and established from the beginning. And this is truly vain. It's vanity. It's craziness. It don't even make sense. So we have to remember our days in this life have already been determined. We cannot pass the bounds that have been set, because it's going to go right back over here. We're going to go back over here to Job. Let's go back over here to Job. Yep. Job chapter 14. Job chapter 14, we're going to hit verse 5 again. And it says, seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. So why do we sit there and try to go beyond that? Why do we sit there and try to go beyond our boundaries that we can't pass? Why do we sit there and try to go beyond what we actually have the capacity to do? Let's look at something, because we can even see this here when we told this over here in Proverbs. Let's look at something in Proverbs chapter 8. Proverbs chapter 8 and verse 29. We're going to see something interesting right here. Proverbs chapter 8, verse 29. And it says, when he gave to the sea his decree, that the waters should not pass his commandment, when he appointed the foundations of the earth. So we can see this. It's saying when he gave the sea his decree that the water should not pass his commandment, his law, when he ordained the foundations of the earth. So we can even see this, even looking at it in the physical, even looking at the sea. When you go out to the ocean, as large and as vast as it is, it's a huge, great body of water when you're looking at it. But even in that, it cannot pass its bounds. Think about that. When you go out to the ocean and you look at that huge body of water, we can't even number the amount of drops of water that's actually in the sea, or we don't even know how deep it actually is. But it cannot pass the commandment that it was given. It cannot pass its bounds. That's why when you go out to the sea, you go to the beach, the waters are only going to come up to the shore, but so far, because it was given its boundaries by Jehovah's word, by his law that he established. So understanding that, just as the same thing with us. See, this sea spiritually represents people, a great multitude of people. So being people, we are given a decree. We are given commandments and instructions and knowledge on the things that we must understand and follow. And we are governed by Jehovah's laws. And we cannot go beyond that, because anything outside of Jehovah's law is outside the commandment that we was given. So we cannot go beyond our measure on what we have been given, because our boundaries are set. See, we are only going to go but so far. We can't see, but we trying to do something that we can't do. This is why when we're sitting there, we have to stay within the book. We have to stay within the laws of the Most High God, because when we go outside of that, we're going to go beyond what we was actually ordained to do. We're going to go beyond our measure. And this is something that we should not be doing. That's why we see this when we go over here to Second Corinthians chapter 10. We look at 2 Corinthians chapter 10 and we'll hit verse 14. He tells us, it says, for we stretch not ourselves beyond our measure. So beyond our span, beyond our reach, as though we reach not unto you. For we are come as far as to you also in preaching the message, the gospel, the message of Christ, of Jehovah. So we see that we cannot go past the measure that is given unto us. We cannot reach beyond the things that is given unto us. This is why everything that we speak must come from the word of God, and we must hold to it. We cannot go past that understanding that was given us. We cannot do anything outside of that. But this is why we have the problem, because you have men that want to go outside of that. You have men that try to stretch themselves beyond the laws that was ordained and decreed by the Most High. Because we have to understand that we are given certain instructions and commandments, laws that we are to follow, understanding that the flesh is going to die. And it's appointed for man once to die. And the flesh is temporary. And we are not to put our trust in flesh. But you have men who have reached beyond this understanding, that have tried to come up with ways to preserve their flesh, that try to come up with ways to magnify and exalt the flesh and gain immortality in this life, such as with this body freezing stuff. We just looked at it. See, doing those things, they trying to go beyond what was already established. They trying to go beyond the boundaries that was already set and established for us. Coming up with all these evil thoughts, seeking to come up with all these ways to make people live longer when our days are already determined. See, we understand this because we stand within the book. We stand within the understanding that was given unto us. But when we reach outside of that understanding, now we're trying to do other things that's outside the word of God. This is how all these issues come up. See, we are only given a certain amount of time in this world. However many years that the Most High God gave us, that's what we are going to get. And we are not going to pass by that. It don't matter. It don't matter if we get there healthy. It don't matter if we get there in a wheelchair, bedridden, whatever. It don't matter if it's 5 years. It don't matter if it's 10 years. It don't matter if it's 20 years, 30 years, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years. We are going to receive that amount of time that we have been given in this life. See, but instead of learning of the things that we should, we like to sit there and waste time entertaining our fleshly desires, seeking to preserve this life when nothing in this world is going to last forever. See, we see it in all the things that's around us. We see it in foods. We see it in fruits, even in vegetables. All these things naturally decay and decompose over time because that's how it was made. It's temporary. But then once again, matter of fact, let me just go ahead and I'm gonna pull this up. I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna go to Genesis chapter 1, and I just want to have this here because Genesis chapter 1 verse 31. He tells us, it said, and God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. So that's why I was saying everything that God made was very good for the reason why he made it. So we got foods, we got fruits, we got vegetables, all these things that is nutritional for the body. But these things are temporary. They decay. They decompose over time. They're not meant to last forever. But then you have, once again, the scientists, once again, who sit there, they go outside of the understanding that's given to us. They're going to go beyond their measure, trying to come up with something that they shouldn't. Such as what? These genetically modified foods and things. Trying to preserve these foods to make them last longer. It's the same as that thing. It's still showing you the same mindset. We sit there, we constantly trying to find a way to go beyond what we supposed to be doing. We going outside of the law of the Most High, thinking we're going to make things better. When JEHOVAH already established from the beginning that everything he made was good. We see it here. And God saw everything that he had made. Remember, it was very good. So everything that the Most High God made serves a purpose for why it was made. It was good for the reason it was made. Just as we can see with the trees and the flowers and the plants, they go through the same process. These things, when they grow, they flourish for a time, but eventually they grow old. Eventually they start to wither. Those leaves start to fade, and they start to fade away over time. And new ones grow afterward. See, all these things in the world serve as teaching methods for us. But it's all good, because everything he made was very good. Because that's the way God made it to be. So why, if that's the way that God made it to be, he made it very good. Why do people sit there and try to change this? Why do we as people sit there and try to change these things? Why do we seek to make temporary things last longer? See, we sit there and do that, but we don't even take out the time to consider the reason why it actually decays. We don't take out the time to consider why it's actually withering away. It was made to do that, but we don't take out the time to actually consider why it's actually doing it. We trying to figure out how to preserve it and change it and alter it and genetically modify it rather than understanding why God made it that way. See, this is why we have so much of a problem. We don't consider these things. We just want to do stuff that we want to do. But that's why you see in Romans, let's go to Romans chapter 1. Romans chapter 1 and verse 20. He told us this right here, so we should understand. He says, for the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. But we don't consider this at all. See, we rather glory in our own works, thinking that making these genetically modified foods, creating things to preserve it longer, we thinking by doing that, we thinking that we perfecting something and making it better. We as a people, when we do these things, we think we better than God, failing to realize that everything that God made, the trees, the plants, the flowers, the fruits, the vegetables, the animals, even us, people, everything withers away over time. This is not a flaw in creation. JEHOVAH made it that way. Everything he made was very good, but it's to help us understand that this life, this world, the life of flesh is vanity. It's temporary. All things must come to an end. But instead of trying to recognize this, we decide, you know what? We can make this better. We can preserve this. We can make this last longer. Foolishness. We trying to perfect something that's not broken. We trying to perfect something that was already made very good from the beginning. It was already established. So we want to glorify flesh and our works and find ways to make our flesh last forever than the things that we want to do. Showing you people who do this and seek this have no respect. They have absolutely 100% no respect for the ways of the Most High God whatsoever. Showing you that they actually hate the ways of the Most High. Why? Because they don't want to accept the fact that the flesh is temporary. See, we want to glory in something that was not meant to be preserved because we're trying to stretch ourselves beyond our measure. And this is all due to pride, self-righteousness, self-exaltation, arrogancy. We want to exalt ourselves and our works. Oh, we did something. Look at what we did. It's craziness. We're trying to exalt ourselves to a level where we don't belong. That's why you even see this here. Why you think we did this? We go to Genesis chapter 11. We're going to hit Genesis chapter 11. We're going to hit verse 4. It says, and they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven. You see that? And let us make us a name. Let us make us a way, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. See, this is our mindset. Trying to exalt ourselves in the position where we don't belong. Trying to exalt ourselves on high. Magnify our own glory. Let's go over here to Isaiah. We're going to hit Isaiah chapter 14. Isaiah chapter 14, and we're going to hit verse 13 and verse 14. And it says, for thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne, my dominion, my glory above the stars of God. I will sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. See, these are the things that we get into. This is why we like to sit there and create and come up with these things thinking we perfecting something that God made. We thinking, oh, God made something very good. He established everything by his law. And now we sit there and look at it and say, no, you know what? Nah, we gonna be like the Most High. Now we gonna take it and we gonna perfect it. Stupid. It's foolishness. See? But this is what flesh seeks. Flesh seeks his own glory. That's why we exalt ourselves to the level try to be like the Most High. See, we don't want to glorify in the works that the Most High God made and the things that he's done. We don't want that. We want to glorify the stuff that we do, the stuff that we create with our own powers. This is why we see all these things in the world, all of these artificial, genetically modified creations, because we sit there and exalt ourselves. We place ourselves on the level of God, trying to make ourselves equal to him when we created nothing. We didn't even create ourselves, but now we trying to create stuff. You can't make it make sense. Make it make sense. We've exalted ourselves beyond our measure, trying to establish our own way rather than understanding the process that we need to go through in order to get to eternal life. We want to preserve a temporary life. We want to make this life in the flesh eternal for us, when that's not going to happen. When it makes no sense. When we know everything in this world is going to come to an end. So let's go over here to Isaiah. We're going to Isaiah chapter 2. Let me see something here. And what if I hit Isaiah chapter 1? Yeah, there we go. All right, so Isaiah chapter 2. And we're going to hit verse 12. Isaiah chapter 2, verse 12. And it says, "For the day of the Spirit of God of hosts shall be upon everyone that is proud and lofty, and upon everyone that is lifted up, and he shall be brought low." So he letting us know this is going to happen. So again, what benefit is it for us to glory in our flesh? What benefit is it? What profit is it for us to exalt ourselves and magnify our works that we do and magnify those things as if it's something great, when all of those things are going to be brought low? And the word of God is the only thing that's going to stand in the end. Why? Because he tell us in verse 11, Isaiah chapter 2, verse 11, he tell you, "The lofty looks of man shall be humbled, and the haughtiness of men shall be bowed down." Watch this. "And the Spirit of God alone, the Spirit of God alone shall be exalted in that day." That's the only thing that's going to stand. The Spirit of God, the word of God, JEHOVAH. So we can see this here. So we have to understand that flesh is temporal. There is nothing to gain from glorifying in the flesh. See, all flesh is going to bring us is false hopes and false beliefs. See, this is why it's important for us to understand what's going on. And we need to understand what we truly need to be doing. See, because JEHOVAH gives us a certain amount of time in this world, however amount of years that we have, not to sit here to entertain ourselves with the life of flesh or live our lives to the fullest. We here to put in work. We here to understand what's required of us so we can get back right with the Most High. We need to understand why we even in this flesh in the first place. See, that's what we need to understand. So let's go somewhere. We're going to go to Ecclesiasticus or Sirach. Ecclesiasticus, Sirach, chapter 17. And we're going to hit verse 1 and verse 2. Sirach chapter 17, verse 1 and verse 2. And it says, "The Lord, the Creator, created man of the earth and turned him into it again." Verse 2. "He gave them few days and a short time, and power also over the things therein." So we was put here in this world to learn. The flesh was never meant to last forever. So while we are here in this world, we should be learning everything that we need to know how to get out of this flesh, not try to sit here and save the flesh. Why? Because it's just a covering. See, JEHOVAH does not care about the flesh. See, he put us in flesh to show us ourselves and the things that we was doing contrary to him. This is what happened. So we actually going to see that, because we're going to go back over here to Genesis. So we want to see some things. Let's go back over here to Genesis. we're going to hit Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3, and this is what we want right here. Verse 17. Genesis chapter 3, verse 17, it says, and unto Adam, man, male and female, he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and has learned of the tree which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not learn of it. Watch this. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. That's a full thought. In sorrow thou shalt learn of it all the days of thy life. So we can see it right here. He's telling us something. This right here. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. So that's what we need to understand. So we're going to look at sake, so we can even see something with that. Let's look at sake. We see sake. We see principle, action, purpose, benefit. So that's actually what we're going to be looking at, that benefit. So cursed is the ground for thy sake, for thy benefit. Now, it might sound crazy, but this is the point. See, JEHOVAH cursed the ground. He cursed the flesh, but it was for our sakes. It was for our benefit, but to teach us something. See, this is why we are going to learn about the flesh, these things all the days of our life. However long we have in this world, we are going to learn of these works that we have done that are contrary to JEHOVAH. But what we've done instead, we've sat there, instead of learning of these things that we've done, we sat there, we started praising our flesh. We started glorifying our flesh. We started magnifying our flesh, trying to make it last longer, trying to dress it up, trying to make it look good, instead of understanding that we will place in it to show us our sins and our disobedience, not to sit there and fall in love with it. So see, us being in flesh literally lets us know how we all fell short of the glory of God. See, it's a constant reminder of our mortal state and how we are all covered in sin, but we are all supposed to be learning from that. So it doesn't serve just as a punishment upon us, but it's a reminder that we are mortal and that we have limitations. See, that we are supposed to learn how to trust in JEHOVAH. Why? Because we are going to fall short. See, we in flesh, we going to make mistakes, but we must understand that this flesh is going to weigh us down and burden us with many sorrows and many afflictions. But it all serves as a purpose for us to recognize that we cannot trust in ourselves, but we must rely on JEHOVAH. See, that is the point, because it's for our sake. It's for our benefit, so we can understand why our trust must lie. That's the point of it. See, on the surface, it appears burdensome, but it actually serves as a teaching mechanism for us to truly realize that we cannot trust in anything temporary. See, it forces us to move our mind to eternal things. That's the whole point of it. These are the things we're supposed to be learning. So we're going to hit verse 18 and verse 19. He tells us, he said, thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee. And thou shalt learn the herb of the field. In the sweat, in the labor of thy face, thou shalt eat bread. So thou shalt learn knowledge, till thou return unto the ground. For out of it thou wast taken, thus thou art in our perfection and beauty. Unto dust shalt thou return. So all of this is clear. We are here to learn knowledge. We are here to learn of ourselves and learn about what we need to do to get right with God. But we have to understand that these bodies are going back to the ground from which they came, because these are temporary vessels. This is something that we seen was already established from the beginning. So it makes no sense to seek to preserve flesh. It makes no sense for people to seek to preserve their flesh or even make these alterations or changes to our bodies, because it wasn't made for that. It wasn't made for that. It wasn't made for that purpose. Why are we sitting here doing these things? We're going to hit verse 21. Genesis 3:21. He tells us, he says, unto Adam also and his wife did the Lord God make coats of skins and clothed them. So this is the point. We are clothed in these coats of skins, these mortal clothes. This is showing us our mortality. See, we have to remember within we are spiritual beings. But we are being housed. We are clothed in these earthly bodies. We covered in flesh, but it was for our sake. See, we can't forget that. And Genesis 3:17, we can't forget this. Cursed is the ground for thy sake, for thy benefit. It's still to teach us something. We can't get caught up in the fact that we in flesh. We have to understand the purpose behind it and what we supposed to be learning from it. That's the thing. See, us being covered in these coats of skins shows us what sin looked like. That's why we can even see these things when we go over here to Galatians. Let's go to Galatians. Galatians chapter 5, and we gonna hit Galatians chapter 5, and we gonna hit verse 19 down to 21. He tells us, he said, now the works of the flesh are manifest, are made known. Why? Because it's made known through this covering of skin, which are these: what? Adultery, fornication, uncleanliness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, immolations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, rivalings, and such like, of which I tell you before, as I have also told you in time past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. So this is why we can see all of these things right here. These are the works of the flesh, but we can physically see these things happening. Why? Because we are covered in the flesh. These are all the ways that we like to get into. So the thing is, so when we see adultery physically, we can understand it. We can see when somebody out there cheating on their spouse with another person. See, we know what that looks like physically because you see it, you looking at it, you seeing it happen. So then we should be able to understand what that's actually showing us spiritually. See, these are the things that we should understand. So, but what we have the problem with is this. See, we'll go around and say, well, I ain't never did none of that. I ain't never went out there and messed around like that. See, that's okay. But we just looking at it physically. We looking at physical works, but then we don't actually consider what we actually be doing spiritually. Why? Because spiritually, we know we married to JEHOVAH. We know that JEHOVAH is our husband. That's who we are actually joined to. So once we come to the realization and of understanding that, but then we sit there and continue to go back to the world, and we still out there putting our trust in our flesh and our own strength, and we joining back to the ways of the world, then how can we say that we actually being faithful to JEHOVAH? If we trust in the flesh and we join into the ways of the world, we trusting in the ways of flesh, how can we say we actually being faithful to our husband? See, that's the thing that we have to check. See, don't worry about the physical part. Oh, I ain't doing it physically. Okay, we need to check. Are we doing it spiritually? How can we say that we being faithful to our husband, who we made that vow with, if we sit there and break the covenant that we made with our God? We breaking our vows. We breaking our covenant. We saying we gonna hold to something and we don't hold to it. We breaking our agreements that we made and we join to the things of the flesh. Then how can we say that we are truly being faithful to our husband? How can we say that? How? Which, again, JEHOVAH, our husband. See, are we actually being faithful to our husband? Or are we going outside of our marriage and messing around with something else? See, this is what we have to understand. See, what we'll do, we'll start joining ourselves to another spirit that's not of God. See, that's why we can even see this when we go over here to Isaiah. In Isaiah chapter 30. Isaiah chapter 30 and verse 1. He says, woe unto the rebellious children, saith the Spirit of God, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin unto sin. See, we get caught up in that. Being rebellious against our husband, against JEHOVAH. See, I keep saying it that way because I want us to understand how serious this is. See, we'll sit there and say, well, I ain't never did that to my husband. I ain't never did that to my wife. Okay, well, guess what? JEHOVAH's our husband, so we got to look at it that way. Now we should understand. We sitting there, we being rebellious to our husband. Because a lot of us will take these things serious physically, but we not actually considering spiritually what we actually doing. So when we sitting there and we rebellion, we sit there and we in rebellion against JEHOVAH and taking counsel, taking guidance and direction from something else that's not of him, and we following after that, we literally sitting there joining ourselves to something that's not our husband. We putting our trust in that. showing that we love the things of the flesh more than we love the things of God. Guess what? That's committing spiritual adultery. Just like that. Shows us that. That's the whole point. So when we see it, so we cover it in flesh. So when we see it physically, we see what's going on. Then we can flip that around and understand what that actually looks like spiritually. That's the whole point. It's to teach us. See, but when we in spiritual adultery, we not staying joined to JEHOVAH. We not staying faithful to JEHOVAH, our husband. We not being faithful to our husband. We joining ourselves to something that's not of him. Guess what? Same thing with fornication. Fornication. It's the same thing. See, physically, we can see it. What? That's when you have people messing around with a whole bunch of different people, getting into all these different sexual relations with all these different people, jumping from person to person, being a whore. Fornication. We can see this stuff happening physically. But guess what? When we flip it spiritually, we must understand that messing around, jumping around from person to person, whoring around like that, sleeping around, that ain't no different from whoring around with a whole bunch of different doctrines and beliefs. Guess what? We get into it. He told us about it here in Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 14. In Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 14, and verse 12 down to 14. He told us about it. He says, for what? For the devising, the inventing, the conceiving of idols was the beginning of what? Spiritual fornication. And the invention of them, the corruption of life. For neither were they from the beginning, neither shall they be forever. For by vain glory, for through vain glory of men, they entered the world. Exactly the point. And therefore shall they come shortly to an end. This is the point, because man seeks to glorify himself through his own idolatrous works, coming up with what? These false gods, creating these graven images of this Jesus, a man that they never seen before, but creating and start worshiping this man. You got the white one, you got the white image, you got the black image. You got the white image that they worship in the church buildings. You got the black image that they worship on the street corners in these camps. Guess what? Both are abominations. These are idols. But we do these things because we seeking our own praise from our own works, building these sculptures of these false gods and of men, magnifying our works. But once again, he letting us know, guess what? You can do all that all day, every day. Anybody who wants to get into those things, guess what? He tell you again, verse 14, for by vain glory of men, they entered the world. Yeah, but guess what? Therefore shall they come shortly to an end. It's all gonna come to an end. Because it's not gonna last. It don't matter. See, this is the point. It don't matter how great of a work a man or a woman or flesh creates in this world. It is never going to last forever. It's going to be put all to an end. That's the point. That's what we have to understand. But once again, this is the whole point on why we were put in the flesh, so we could see exactly the things that we were doing. So then once we see them, we understand it. Now we can relate them back spiritually. The same with the same with everything else. Shoot, we go back over here. Well, I'll go back over here to Galatians. Galatians chapter 5. Same with everything else. What? Adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, immolations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, rivalries. All these things. We have the ability to see these things physically, because this is what the flesh is actually going to do and manifest, make known. This is what the flesh is going to produce. These physical works, which man glories in. These things. But then we must understand, when we're looking at it physically, we have to understand what it's actually showing us spiritually. This is why we keep talking about that. So it goes right back to Romans. We'll read it again. Romans chapter 1, Romans chapter 1, verse 20. For the visible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. So we can understand these invisible things by the things that are made. What? And what's something that's made? These bodies, these vessels were made, these coverings, these coats of skin that we in. So not only were we given these coats of skin due to our disobedience and our rebellion against JEHOVAH. See, it wasn't merely about that, but they also serve as a schoolmaster to us to teach us what these things are spiritually. Because even though we in flesh, now we have an opportunity to learn and to clearly see and understand what these things are. So guess what? Now we without excuse. We can't say we don't know what this stuff looks like. We can't say we don't understand these things, such as what? Again, idolatry. Why? Because we can see it. Even in our own selves, we'll sit there. Not only will we idolize physical things that we can touch, that we can see, and objects and all these idols, we'll sit there, we'll idolize ourselves when we're sitting there and we glorify our own bodies. See, that's why I even brought up the point about us doing all these surgeries and making these alterations to ourselves, trying to perfect something that was already made perfect. JEHOVAH designed us in the way that he made us to be. We're going to see something, but we want to change it when it shouldn't be the focus. We're going to see something over here in Psalms. We're going to see something over here in Psalms chapter 139. Psalms chapter 139, and we're going to hit verse 14. He tells us, Psalms 139, verse 14, and it says, I will praise thee, I will confess thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul, my spirit knoweth right well. See, but we are more focused on the outside appearance. See, that's why we have the problem. See, we more focused on the outside rather than what's within. See, the flesh was never the focus. See, that was just a covering. See, it's the spirit within that should be beautiful in the sight of God. But guess what? We reject that. We more focus on beautifying our outside rather than the inside. See, we don't want to accept that instead of appreciating how we was made, we think we can do better than God. So we like to turn around and alter what we didn't create because we believe that we're going to make ourselves look better. We're trying to improve on something that we shouldn't even be focusing on at all. See, this is the problem. So we start idolizing ourselves. We start idolizing the flesh. Why? Because how we idolize the flesh, we're going to devote ourselves to it. We're going to devote all our time. We're going to devote all our attention to making sure our flesh looks good. And guess what? Won't think twice about it. Why? It's natural. We just sit there like it's a constant thing that we get into. We become more focused on the outward appearances of ourselves rather than the inward spirit. Then we'll believe just because we look good physically on the outside and we appear holy physically, thinking that we're doing something and not understanding that it's what's within that truly matters. The spirit within is who we truly are. It's not about our outward appearances. Why? Because we can look beautiful outwardly and still be ugly within. See, that's what we have to understand. So why do we put so much focus on our physical selves when it's just housing the spirits of who we truly are? Why we put so much focus on the physical? When he already told us over here in 1 Samuel. Let's go to 1 Samuel. We're going to hit 1 Samuel chapter 16. 1 Samuel chapter 16. And we're going to hit verse 7. He tell you right here. It says, but the Spirit of God said unto Samuel, look not on his countenance or the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For the Spirit of God seeth not as man seeth. For flesh looketh upon the outward appearance, but the Spirit of God looketh upon the heart. So the Spirit of God, he's going to look upon the desires, the mind, the thoughts, the imaginations, what's within. So JEHOVAH, the Spirit of God, is going to look within. He's not concerned with our outward appearances or our fleshly appearances. So why are we? We supposed to be in the image of God, right? but we sitting there glorying in the image of man. So when we look in the mirror, we shouldn't see anything because we spirit. We should be in the image of God. But is this true for us? Is that something that we can actually say that's true for us? So what do we actually see when we actually look in the mirror? What do we see? Why do we sit around looking in the mirror, looking at ourselves? Why we sit around staring at ourselves, worrying about our physical flaws? Oh, I'm too fat. I got rolls. I got these pimples on my face. Oh, I don't like freckles. I don't like how my face looks. I don't like how my hair is. I don't like how my body look. Why do we sit there and do that? We can't say we don't do it. We can't say we'll sit there and do it. Well, shoot, I know I do it. I know I've done it. I still be doing it. Still be doing it. So I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat anything like it ain't real, like it ain't something that I actually struggle with. Because it's real. We'll become insecure about the way our physical bodies look. So we'll put a lot of our time and attention in beautifying our flesh, worrying about how good we look on the outside, worrying about our appearances. But guess what? We don't actually look at what's going on within. We don't truly take out the time to truly consider what's actually going on in our hearts. Asking ourselves, is our spirit right with God? Are we that beautiful spirit that JEHOVAH is looking for? Do we take out the time to do that when we're looking at ourselves in the mirror? Do we take out the time to do that? See, this is why we have so much of the problem. We tend to glorify what's seen and put in so much work, time, and effort towards that. But then we deny and neglect what's unseen. So what benefit is that when it's temporary? It's not going to last. Our physical bodies, our physical features, all these things are going to fade away. We sitting there making sure what? Making sure our hair on point. Making sure it's in the perfect shape. Shoot, when I was younger, I used to make sure that I could get a haircut every single week. I made sure I made it to that barbershop every single week because I was going to make sure I had a straight line up. I was going to make sure that I had a fade. My fade was right, all that. Not because I needed it, but because I was more focused on my flesh. See, I felt like if I didn't get that fresh fade every week, I wouldn't even want to walk out in public. I wouldn't want nobody looking at me. But then once I got that haircut, now I got all the confidence in the world. Now I'm sitting there, look, I'm trying to go everywhere, trying to go in every store, trying to go every place, just finding stuff to do. Just finding stuff to do. Why? Because I want it to be seen. I want it to be noticed. I want it to be praised. I wanted somebody to tell me, oh, he looked good. All because of a haircut. All because of a dang haircut. But the point is, physical features shouldn't determine our confidence. See, by no means am I saying that we shouldn't take care of our appearances. See, I'm not saying that. But we need to understand where our focus should be. Because the question is, does physical appearance determine our standing with God? Does it? Are we more focused on our service and being men pleasers, or are we truly seeking to serve the Most High in spirit and in truth? See, sitting there making sure my clothes nice, making sure I got the cleanest, best shoes on, making sure we got the shiny watches, the nice glasses, the nice chains, the golden earrings. We do all these things, which having those things aren't the issue. It's where our focus is. It's where we putting our attention to. See, if we can put all that time and effort to making ourselves fresh and clean on the outside, how much time, focus, and attention are we going to put towards our mindset that we putting towards our spiritual growth? Where are our desires and our thoughts directed towards? Is it towards serving JEHOVAH or is it towards serving ourselves? See, what profit will we get from making sure our outward appearances look good, but we don't put in that same effort or more to make sure our hearts are right with God? What profit is it? Tell me. See, this is what we have to understand. Let's look at something. Let's go to Luke. Let's go to Luke chapter 11. We're going to hit Luke chapter 11, and we're going to hit verse 39 and 40. Luke chapter 11, verse 39 and 40. And it says, and the Lord said unto him, now do you Pharisees. So we know these Pharisees are those who hold to the laws of flesh. Now do you Pharisees make clean, make pure, make holy the outside of the cup. So we're going to make clean the outside of the vessel and the platter. But your inward part is full of ravening and wickedness. The outside of the cup clean. See, our outward vessels are clean on the outside. But then what? We full of wickedness. We full of iniquity. We full of sin. We full of unrighteousness. We full of corruption. This is why we have the issue. Verse 40. You fools, did not he that made that which is without make that which is within also? But do we really consider this? See, we put all of our attention on our physical appearances, but do we consider what we actually look like on the inside? See, many of us today are just as these Pharisees. Why? Because we focus on flesh. We self-righteous. We put all our devotion and our dedication to making sure our flesh look good, trying to appear holified and righteous outwardly, but within we'll be full of wickedness, all types of confusion and unrighteousness. See, we focus more on the physical things, but neglect the spiritual, not understanding that the physical things, everything that's on the outside is temporary. It's going to fade away anyways, but within our spirit is eternal. That's who we truly are. See, whatever is truly in our hearts is what is going to manifest itself outwardly. Whatever is truly in our hearts is what's going to manifest itself outwardly. So if our focus is glorifying our bodies, then that's what is actually in our hearts. Being what? Being self-centered, being conceited, being prideful. But guess what? It's going to show itself outwardly. You'll be able to see it. It's going to be in our actions. It's going to be in our speech. It's going to be in our walk. It's going to be in our behaviors. See, this is why you can even see these men that get in these high positions, such as these false pastors and these camp leaders. See, the first thing that you're going to see that they're going to have this particular outward appearance. You're going to see them with these long gowns and these white collars with these crosses on. Then you're going to see these men on the street corners wearing these fringes. But then they wearing them on the outside for people to see. Not understanding that those fringes are for you. They're not for people. They're supposed to be within. Then they wearing these gauntlets around their arms and these long capes and these flashy uniforms. See, all of this is nothing but for show. It's an act. It's a performance to draw attention to the flesh. But we as a people, we fall for these things because we believe that one's outward appearance determines who's holy and who's of God. And that is completely far from the truth. But this is what we get into. Then you have these same guys, these same camp guys. They glory in a name. This is what we get caught up in. This is what these men on these street corners do. They call themselves by the name of Israel, but do not actually follow the ways of God. That's why he said, they call themselves Israel United in Christ, elders of Israel, watchmen for Israel, all these things, Israel, everything. Look, they're going to make sure that the name or whatever that group is, they got Israel in it. But guess what? But don't actually follow the ways of Israel, but call themselves it. But that's why we can even see here when we go over here to Romans. Let's go. Let's hit Romans chapter 9. Romans chapter 9, we're going to hit verse 6 down to verse 8. And it tells us, it says, not as though the word of God taketh none effect, for they are not all Israel which are of Israel. Neither because they are of the seed of Abraham are they all children. But however, in Isaac shall that seed be called. That is, they which are the children of the flesh, these are not the children of God, but the children of the promise are counted for the seed. So just because you dress in a certain type of way and wearing these flashy garments does not make you holy. That does not make you Jehovah's servant. See, just because people walk around with the name of Israel, that does not make you Israel. That does not make you Jehovah's servant. But you have these men that like to go around and change. They go around and alter and change their physical names. See, we getting right back into the same thing. We want to make changes. We want to make alterations. We think we're going to make something better. We like to change our physical names, and it means nothing. You got men changing their names to Yasharallah Israel, Ben Israel, the Israel, whatever. All these things, sitting there glorying in a name and not actually walking the path of righteousness. That's hypocrisy. Because you sitting there, you want the glory, you want to sit there and glory in the name and appear a certain type of way, but not actually walking in that way. That's why we even see this here when we go over here to Isaiah. When we hit Isaiah chapter 4, and we hit verse 1. You tell you right here, it says, and in that day, 7 women. So these 7 spirits until completion shall take hold of one man, one male or female, saying, we will eat our own bread. We're going to learn our own knowledge and wear our own apparel. We're going to wear our own covering. Only let us be called by thy name, thy way, to take away our reapproach, to take away our shame. See, but you have these dumb men in these camps that really believe this is talking about them having multiple women and multiple wives. They literally take this verse and they believe that's what it's saying, showing their stupidity, showing the carnal mind. Because you have these men that's seeking to glory in fleshly works, having these multiple women, not understanding that it has nothing to do with any of that. Not understanding that this is telling you about these spirits, these 7 women, these 7 spirits, these 7 spirits until completion, that is going to join to one male or one female. And you're going to end up learning your own knowledge and wearing your own covering. But then we want to be called by the name of Israel to cover your shame, to cover your sin. This is exactly what these men are doing. They want the glory in a name, thinking that if they have the name of Israel plastered on them, then that makes them holy. But then sit there and follow every wicked doctrine under the sun and do everything contrary to JEHOVAH, but then want the glory in his name. This is what we're talking about. See, we sitting there focusing on the outward things. And this is why these men today are no different from modern day Pharisees. Teaching things according to the flesh. Focus on the outward man. Not understanding that a name spiritually is speaking of a way. It's a path that you're living. So a name has nothing to do with changing your name physically, thinking that that's portraying holiness. It has nothing to do with that. To have the name of Israel is walking the way, the path of Israel, which is Jehovah's servant, walking in that path. It has nothing to do with anything physical, but men seek to exalt themselves, thinking that if they have this name changed physically, it's going to mean something when it actually profits nothing. But hey, this is what we get into. But we're going to go over here to Romans. We're going to hit Romans chapter 2. He tell us something. In Romans chapter 2, we're going to hit verse 28 and verse 29. He tell us, he says, for he is not a Jew, for he is not a follower of Christ, which is one outwardly. Neither is that circumcision, which is outward in the flesh, but he is a follower of Christ, which is one inwardly, and the circumcision that is of the heart in the spirit and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of God. This is the point. So our hearts have to be circumcised. They have to be dedicated to JEHOVAH, separating ourselves from sin and all fleshly works. See, it has nothing to do with the outward man or physical things. The outward man has nothing to do with anything. It's just flesh. But men want to appear a certain type of way to receive attention, to receive praise from people. These are the things that we like to glory in, and it profits nothing. All it does is just give you that little temporary satisfaction that you're looking for. But within, you still full of dead men bones. Not understanding. In order for anyone to be truly holy or be separated unto God, an inward transformation is necessary that must happen for us to be truly clean. It's not about how you look outwardly. But as long as we continue to look at things in that way, the things that we can see, and that's where our focus is, we'll never truly look within to see what we actually got going on and what we need and the changes that we need to make. That's why we'll have the problem. So let's go over here to Matthew. We're going to hit Matthew chapter 23. Matthew chapter 23. And we're going to hit verse 26. It tells right here, it says, thou blind Pharisee, thou ignorant Pharisee, cleanse first, make clean first that which is within the cup and platter, that the outside of them may be clean also. He's telling us, you got to clean up what's within, that the outside may be clean. Why? Because if we truly working on ourselves from within and we being cleansed in our hearts and our minds and in our thoughts, then what's manifest is automatically going to reflect that. Our outward appearance, our walk, our behavior is going to reflect what's coming from within. See, it's not about what we doing physically. It's about what's going on with us spiritually. See, this is why I even brought up the works of the flesh earlier. See, a lot of us will sit there, like I said, we'll sit there and boast about not doing things physically because we so focused on the fleshly, the carnal aspect of things. We don't consider what's really in our hearts. We don't consider the spiritual side of things. You have people that say, like you said, oh, I never committed adultery. I never been a fornicator. Really? But we sat there and ran up and down them church buildings all our lives. We jumped from camp to camp all our lives. We went from one doctrine to another doctrine all our lives. We went from one belief to another belief all our lives. We went from one idol God to another idol God all our lives. But then we sit there and say we never committed these things. See, that's why we have the problem, because shoot, he gonna tell us exactly what we done, because we gonna go over here to Ezekiel chapter 16. Ezekiel chapter 16, we're gonna hit verse 29 down to 31. Ezekiel chapter 16, we're going to hit verse 29 to 31. Ezekiel chapter 16, 29 to 31. Actually, we're going to 32. We're going to verse 32. Ezekiel 16, 29 to 32. And it says, thou hast moreover multiplied thy fornication in the land of Canaan unto Chaldea. Why? Because that's exactly where we come from. This Chaldean lifestyle practices, wandering around with all these different doctrines and worldly knowledge. Yet thou was not satisfied herewith. He said, how weak is thine heart, saith the Lord God, seeing thou doest all these things, the work of an imperious, whorish spirit. That woman is a spirit. So we see how it keeps going back to the spirit, because our issues are what's going on with us from within. It don't have nothing to do with the physical things. Those things just manifest based on what the issues we have coming from within. It said, and that thou buildest thy eminent place in the head of every way, and makest thine high place in every street, and has not been as an harlot, in that thou scornest hire. Watch this. But as a wife that committeth adultery, which taketh strangers instead in replacement of her husband, who is who? JEHOVAH. That's the things we do. So we've done all these things and we continue to do these things. But then we think we ain't did nothing. We think we ain't did nothing. See, it's bad enough to commit these acts physically, but we don't consider the spiritual consequences of rebellion against the one who actually has power over our lives. See, this is why we can't look at no sin worse than the other, because if we commit one, we committed them all. When we sitting there running up and down them church buildings like it was no tomorrow, participating in them camp gatherings and thinking nothing of it, playing the whore. We were the biggest whores out there. So it don't matter if you didn't do something physical. It ain't no glory in that. I didn't do. I ain't physical. No, I ain't never did that. Okay, we did it all our lives spiritually. So we really don't think that we've committed these things and we have these issues with the Most High God that we got to get right. We don't think this is a problem. Let's go over here. We can hit Malachi. He's going to tell us some more on this. Let's go to Malachi. Chapter 2. We're going to hit verse 14 down to 17. Malachi chapter 2, verse 14 down to 17. And it says, yet you say, yet we say, wherefore? Because the Spirit of God had been witness between thee and the wife of thy youth, against whom thou hast dealt treacherously, yet she, thy companion, and the wife of thy covenant. And did not he make one? Yet he had the residue of the Spirit, and wherefore one, that he might seek a godly seed. Therefore, for that reason, take heed to your spirit, and let none deal treacherously against the wife of his youth. For the Spirit of God, the God of Israel, saith that he hateth putting away. for one cover of violence with his garment, saith the Spirit of God of hosts. Therefore, take heed to your spirit that you deal not treacherously, that you deal not what? Treacherously. What is treacherously? We need to take heed that you deal not what? Foolishly, unfaithfully. That's why we was talking about that earlier, being unfaithful. This is what we get into, unfaithfulness. We see this here, deceitfully, beguile, deceive. But we see all these things here. Take heed to your spirit that you deal not foolishly, unfaithfully. This is the point. We need to be faithful to that spirit that's in us. Verse 17, you have wearied the Spirit of God with your words. Yet you say, wherein have we wearied him? When you say, everyone that doeth evil is good in the sight of the Spirit of God, and he delighteth in them. Or, where is the God of judgment, of doctrines and teaching? So we'll sit there and believe just because we didn't do something physically that makes us righteous, when indeed we were still doing evil works. We just didn't know what it was. Failing to realize when we boasting on physical things, we'll sit there and do all these things which makes no sense. That's like we sit there, we'll boast on not eating pork. Oh, I don't eat these unclean foods no more. See, we'll do all of that physically, but it's not just that. Oh, it's not just that. See, we have to look at what it's actually saying. See, just because we stop eating these things physically, that's one thing. But then if we still sitting there and learning of defiled beliefs, then what profit is the physical work when our hearts are still defiled? We'll sit there and hold on to traditions of men and learn of unclean doctrines and practices and unclean lifestyles. So what benefit was it that we stopped eating it physically, but then we still sitting there and we learning ways that we shouldn't? Why? Because we gonna look at something about this swine. Let's look at it. See, we have to stop messing around and playing the game. We're gonna go to Leviticus chapter 11. Leviticus chapter 11. We're gonna hit verse 1 and 2, and then we're gonna jump to 7 because we want to see who he's speaking to. Leviticus chapter 11, verse 1 and 2, and it said, and the Spirit of God spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying unto them, speak unto the children of Israel, speak unto JEHOVAH's servants. Why? Because we supposed to be understanding what this talking about. Saying, these are the beasts which ye shall eat among the beasts that are upon the earth. So let's look at it. Verse 7. He tells us, it says, and the swine, though he divide the hoof and be cloven footed, yet he cheweth not the cud. He is unclean to you. So we know this swine, we speaking of swine, we ain't speaking of no animal. We speaking of a person, because we looking at this spiritually. This is an unclean person that we should not be learning from. But we gonna look at these things. Where it said, though he divide the hoof, which we can even see that the hoof is what? Those living practices, those powers, foot, desire. So the hoof is those living practices. We see that right there. And he's cloven footed. So cloven footed is what? Divided desire. So he divide the hoof. He can divide. He can separate those living practices. He cloven footed. He got divided desires. But guess what? Yet he cheweth not the cud. So put that in there. Well, actually, I'm just going to put cud. We're going to see it right here. The cud is what? The visions, the dreams, the meditation, the prophecies. So we see all this here. So the thing is, so this swine is speaking of a person, this unclean person that we should not be living from. So learning from. So you have those. Understand what's going on. You have those who can divide the hoof. You have those who can separate their living practices and be cloven footed. You have those who can separate our desires of good and evil. We can do this. But guess what? Watch this. Yet he cheweth not the cud. So he don't consider visions, dreams, meditations, and prophecies. See, this is what swine won't do. See, he'll He'll separate his living practices and his desires, but he won't consider nothing. He won't consider the visions. He won't consider the dreams, the prophecies. He won't consider these things. See, this is what we're talking about. See, you have people that like to sit around and talk about, oh, I don't eat pork. The swine is unclean. The swine unclean. Oh, I don't eat pork. Oh, pork this, pork that, pork this, pork this. But guess what? Just sitting there looking at something physically. We focus on the carnal aspect, but then neglecting the spiritual principle and the things that we need to understand. We're going to come back to this, but we need to see something because, hey, we got to make this clear. When we going through this Bible, this is something that we need to understand. We go through this Bible. He tell us something in John chapter 4. We coming back, but we going to go right here real quick. John chapter 4, verse 24. He said, God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Why? Can we jump down to chapter 6? We jump down to chapter 6 and verse 63. He tell us, it is the spirit that quickeneth, the flesh profiteth nothing. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life. Because the things we speaking is spiritual. When we see in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, and we going to hit verse 13. It tells us, it says, which things also we speak, not in the words which man's wisdom teacheth, but which the Holy Ghost, the separated body, teacheth, comparing spiritual things with spiritual. So that's the things we need to understand. So what our problem is, we'll sit there and do physical things and we'll follow it to the T. But that's just the schoolmaster to bring us to the spiritual understanding. We got to compare spiritual things with spiritual. So back over here. So spiritually, right? Spiritually, do we chew the cud? That's something we need to be able to answer within ourselves. Do we chew the cud? Do we consider, do we meditate on these visions, dreams, and prophecies? Or are we living the lifestyle of a swine? We got to answer that within ourselves. See, one who doesn't consider anything, do we meditate on the things that we should? Because I'm going to tell you what, every time we get asked the question, did we meditate? The majority of us, what we say? No. We'll sit there and say, no, 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 no. You see all them ends just rolling through the chat. No, 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 no. That's all we see. But guess what? Guess what? This ain't throwing no shots at nobody. Why? Because I've done it. I put in there too. I put no there too. So guess what? It's gonna hit me too. I've said it. I did it. So this includes me. So the thing is, if we not meditating on things, then what makes us different from swine? We gotta be real with ourselves. If we not sitting here, we not meditating, we not considering the visions, the dreams, the prophecies, the things we should be meditating on, then what makes us different from the swine? How we talking about not eating swine? We acting like swine. What's the point of it? See, the swine, he don't chew the cud. Okay? We don't like to meditate on anything. So what's the difference? We don't meditate and consider on stuff. Then what are we? So why we talk about talking about eating pork? What do you mean? We acting like it. See, so don't think this is sitting here throwing shots at anyone. See, I had to look at myself with this. That's why I say we got to look at our heart. We got to look at what's going on with ourselves within. Get off the physical stuff. We got to look at what's going on spiritually. Because we like to sit there and boast on something we doing physically, but don't actually consider it spiritually. We don't consider the visions, dreams, prophecies, the parables, the dark sayings. When JEHOVAH, he gave us instructions on and told us a couple things that we supposed to be doing and how things work. Because he told us this in Numbers. We're going to look at Numbers chapter 12. Numbers chapter 12, and we're going to hit verse 6. He said what? He said, hear now my words. If there'll be a prophet, if there'll be a mouthpiece of God among you, I, the Spirit of God, will make myself known unto him in a vision, and I will speak to him in a dream. How can he do it? We don't consider it, so how are we going to do it? he tell us again over here in Psalms chapter 78. Psalms chapter 78 and verse 2. He said, what? I will open my mouth in a parable, and I will utter dark sayings and old. So this is how the Most High speaks, in a parable, in these dark sayings, in these dark speeches, in these similitudes. See, why you think we've been running Romans 1:20 throughout that's the whole point, because these physical things that we can see are a similitude of something that we need to understand spiritually. We need to understand that these things are written in parables. So we can't get caught up in the physical. Don't get caught up in the physical aspect. Then we neglect what we supposed to be understanding spiritually about what's going on. That's why I keep saying that over and over and over again. So tell me how. Let's go back and look at it. The swine, though he separate the living practices and be cloven footed and have separated desires, yet he consider not the visions, the dreams, and prophecies. He is unclean to you. So tell me, how is it possible that we say we don't eat swine just because we stopped doing it physically, but then we doing those very same things spiritually? When we don't meditate on things, we don't consider the visions, the dreams, the prophecies, the parables, the dark sayings. We told to meditate all the time. Well, we don't do it. So how can we say we're not living that lifestyle? We told to consider what's going on, but then we go around talking about, oh, well, I don't do that. I don't eat that. But then we still refuse to consider these things. Oh, no, I don't eat the swine. No, Oh, no, keep that pork away from me. Really? But we not considering and meditating on the things that we should? What do you call that then? Because guess what? When we do that, when we acting like swine, that's being what? Contemptible. And we being contemptible, what? We're going to see. Contemptible, vile, base, abhor, reprobate, provoking. And guess what? If we provoking, let's see something. If we provoke, matter of fact, let's go to provoke. We provoke is what? To defy, to dare, to rebel, to disobey, to challenge, to oppose, to resist, to speak against. So, if we swine, we contemptible. We're provoking. We're going to rebel. We're going to disobey. We're going to challenge. Guess what? So when we acting like swine, when we don't consider or meditate on these things, when we told to do something and we don't meditate on these visions, dreams, and prophecies, we don't do that, then guess what? That's being contemptible. Now, we are provoking JEHOVAH because we sitting there rebelling against and not doing the things that we are told to do. Guess what else? Go back to the swine. It's it's put there for clarification, but you see it right there. It's slothful. Cause we're not gonna consider, we're not gonna actually do what we're supposed to be doing. So we being slothful in our works. We acting like the very thing that we saying we not. Hypocrites. And it's really self-righteousness. Because we sitting there thinking we doing something and we not. Because we sitting there, you know why that is? Because we sitting there so focused on the outside. We focus on the flesh and the physical works and neglecting the uncleanness that's actually dwelling in our hearts. So, go back to it. Matthew. Where that at? Matthew chapter 23. Matthew chapter 23, verse 26. Thou blind Pharisee. We might as well, we might as well put all of ourselves there. Thou blind Pharisee, cleanse first. That is, which is within the cup and platter, that the outside of them may be clean also. So we need to clean up what we got going on within. We need to clean up what's going on in our hearts, because We clean that up. We clean that up. That is where true beauty lies. It's not what's on the outside. It's not on the physical things. We need to focus on purifying our desires, not sitting there glorifying our flesh. We're going to hit Matthew right here. Matthew chapter 15. We're going to hit verse. What is this? Yeah, we're going to Matthew chapter 15. Matthew chapter 15, we're going to hit verse 17 and verse 18. Matthew chapter 15, verse 17, verse 18. He tell us something. It says, do not ye yet understand that whatsoever entereth in at the mouth goeth into the belly and is cast out into the draught? But those things which proceed out of the mouth come forth from the heart, and they defile the man. That is exactly the point. So it's not the physical. It's not the physical eating of anything that defiles us. However, it's the thoughts from the heart is what defiles us. So if we eating something unclean, it's not the physical thing that's defiling us by eating it that makes us unclean, because it's going to be casted out anyways. But what actually defiles us and makes us unclean is the desire to have it. That's what's coming from the heart. Because it's coming from what's within. It's the desires of the heart. So that's the whole point of everything. So we shouldn't be focused on focused on the physical things, but instead focusing on the things that we're learning, focusing on cleaning up our hearts and our desires. Because if our hearts are pure and refined, then our actions are going to reflect that anyways. That's the point. Because anything that proceeds out from us is going to come forth from the heart. This is what we need to understand. See, we shouldn't be seeking physical anything. We should be seeking to be decked in righteousness and holiness, being pure of heart, not focusing on the physical things and the physical appearances. That should never be our focus. That's why he tells us this in 1 Peter. 1 Peter chapter 3, and we're going to hit verse 3 and verse 4. He tells us clear as day. He says, whose adorning, let it not be in the outward adorning of the plaiting of the hair and the wearing of gold or putting on of apparel, but let it be the hidden man of the heart, and that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God a great price. That's a great value. That's great worth, that spirit. So this is the whole point. It's not about what we doing physically. See, that's why I even brought up the point about our physical apparel. See, we can look nice. We can look good on the outside. We can look good to people. But does our physical appearance actually reflect what we got going on within? See, just as you can have some of the most beautiful women in the world physically, but then have the most ugliest attitudes and behaviors stuck on themselves and their appearances. So guess what? What profit is it? What profit is your outward beauty and within we full of wickedness? Just as you can have some of the most dapper and clean dressing men you can have in the world. But guess what? But then we'll walk with pride, thinking we better than the next man, making comparisons, all because of our appearances. So again, what does it profit? Because all of that just really shows what's really in our hearts. We glorifying in something that profits nothing. When he's telling us our adorning, our covering, we should be decked in these precious jewels, but not based on an outward apparel, but with a heart of a meek and humble spirit. Because that's what the Most High God is looking for. That's why I say, but let that be the hidden man of the heart, and that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great worth, great price. Because he's looking for that spirit, that beautiful spirit within, because he looks on the heart from what's within, not on the flesh, not on the outside appearance. So this is the whole point, everything that we need to understand. So all of this, it goes right back to us understanding why this flesh was put on us. You see, it wasn't a punishment for sin, but a teaching method, just merely a punishment for sin, but a teaching method to show us our limitations as people, as mortals, to protect the seed that was planted within us. See, JEHOVAH is not concerned about saving our flesh or preserving the flesh. It's not that. That's why he even see this when we go over here to Ecclesiasticus. We hit Ecclesiasticus or Sirach chapter 14. Sirach chapter 14 and verse 17. He tells us something right here. Sirach chapter 14 verse 17. It says what? So, all flesh wax of old as a garment, for the covenant from the beginning is, thou shalt die the death. We see that. Now, let's hit Job. Job chapter 34. And we're going to hit verse 15. Job chapter 34 verse 15. It said, all flesh shall perish together, and man shall turn again into the dust. So we have to understand our mortality and what it's about. That these earthly vessels are going to fade away. But in that, we've been given time to learn from these things. So JEHOVAH is not concerned about the flesh, just as we should not be concerned with the flesh. But it's the seed within us that has to be preserved, that has the potential to grow and truly flourish, providing we stop putting our focus and our attention on growing in this world and flourishing in worldly works. Then we should see what's really important, which is growing in the spirit. So when we looking at flesh, it's not about exalting it. It's not about praising it. It's not about glorifying it. See, all of that is vain and foolish and worthless works. That's what the world seeks to do. See, the world seeks to improve the flesh and perfect it, whatever they think they're going to do. See, when we live in a lifestyle according to the world and the works of it, that profits nothing. See, we have to understand we was placed in these bodies for us to even recognize. We was placed in these bodies for us to recognize our limitations. See, we're gonna go back over here to Genesis, what we looked at before. In Genesis chapter 3, and we're gonna hit verse 17 again. And it tell us. In fact, let me delete that. Yeah, I just need 17 and 21. Genesis chapter 3, verse 17, then verse 21. And it says, and unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not learn of it. Right here. Cursed is the ground for thy sake, for thy benefit. In sorrow thou shalt learn of it all the days of thy life. Verse 21. Unto Adam also and his wife did the Lord God make coats of skin, and clothed them and covered them. See, it might sound crazy, but this covering of flesh is actually placed on us for our benefit. See, as long as we understand the purpose of it. See, it's not to glorify it, but understand the purpose that it serves, because in the flesh, we're going to go through many sorrows. That's why I say, in sorrow, thou shalt learn of it all the days of thy life. So we're going to go through many sorrows. We're going to go through many pains. We're going to go through many afflictions in this flesh, and we're going to struggle with it. We're going to struggle fighting against the ways of the flesh daily. It's going to wear us down. It burdens us. But we'll look at that and be like, dang, like this is tough. Yeah, but the whole point of it is for us to learn to depend on JEHOVAH so he can remove these things from us. See, being in flesh makes us dependent on JEHOVAH. That's the whole point, because we ourselves are limited. We mortal, we limited. So we have to depend on JEHOVAH. That's the whole point. Because as long as we are in these bodies, we always gonna need help. We always gonna need guidance. We always gonna need counsel and direction. We always gonna be limited to what we can actually do physically. So it sounds crazy, but this flesh being upon us actually benefits us if we understand the purpose of it. See, by no means is it about living after the flesh or doing the works of it. See, of course, we need to kill the works of the flesh within us, which we know can only be done through the spirit. But us being mortal beings, it keeps us grounded. It keeps us humble, because we understand we ain't nothing but dust. We ain't nothing but dirt. Providing we humble ourselves, it allows us to recognize that this life is temporary and is vanity. You can see it. We recognize it. We see it every day. What? You see people die every day. So you could be here one day, the next day you gone. But that should make us realize that this life is short. It's not going to last forever. We should be taking every opportunity to get right with JEHOVAH. because we understand that this life is going to come to an end. So our faith shouldn't be in the things here, the things that we can see, that we trust according to the flesh, because we know all things in the world is going to perish. But we must understand our faith should be in the things to come. See, this is what being in these bodies should make us come to the realization of. We realize that we are physically weak and vulnerable and susceptible to all different types of things, to sicknesses, to diseases and infirmities, even of the mind. So, understanding that, we then should understand that without Jehovah's guidance, we can't do anything. We are limited and we need his help. That's what we should be understanding. Without Jehovah's guidance, we can't do nothing because this flesh is weak, but the spirit is what's willing. So without his spirit, we are nothing. So us being in these mortal bodies teaches us dependency upon the spirit and not upon ourselves, because we know our power and our strength is going to get us nowhere. Now we can see and understand that true strength lies not in our own willpower, but in the power that Jehovah gives us, because he's the one who strengthens us, not our flesh, but he strengthens our spirit. See, we was placed in these bodies because we needed to be able to recognize ourselves and how we sought our own glory and how we fell short of his glory. And that became our downfall. But in that, we are able to learn from our mistakes and our shortcomings. See, we needed to be able to recognize that we need Jehovah, that we cannot depend on ourselves. Why? Because we gonna see something. We gonna see something over here. Let's go to Psalms. We're going to hit Psalms chapter 39. Psalms chapter 39 and verse 4. He tell you something. Psalms chapter 39 verse 4. And it says, Spirit of God, make me to know mine end and the measure of my days. What it is, that I may know how frail I am, that I may know how weak, how feeble I am. So this is even what we was talking about earlier at the beginning of this lesson. Our days are determined. We cannot pass our bounds. We cannot go past our measure, our span of life. But we see this right here. We can see right here this plea from David. Now remember, David, he's a king. He's a ruler. He has all this power and all this dominion, all this glory. But even in that, in this plea, this petition to Jehovah, he recognizes his frailty, his limitations, his mortality, being but flesh and blood, showing how weak, feeble, and poor that we are. Because we're nothing without Jehovah. We're nothing without the Spirit of God. See, it don't matter how great we can be in this world. We still mortal. We still subject to death. We still subject to pains and afflictions. So we have to be able to recognize this. But the issue is when we don't want to recognize it, we don't want to see it for what it truly is. But in order for us to truly grow stronger, we have to give up this flesh. We have to understand that our power and our strength is nothing. We have to be able to understand that. See, it's just like, let's say it's just like going outside. You can go outside and we can see these small little ants on the ground and they just sitting there and they just putting in work all day, every day. They just putting in work all day, every day. They just constantly laboring. Doing all these things. But even in that, all it takes is for someone to sit there and step on one or even disrupt what they doing. Like, you know how the ants make these ant hills and then they in that hill doing whatever they're doing. Then you disrupt that. What they gonna do? They're gonna start scattering. They're gonna get all discombobulated and be all over the place. But guess what? We do the same thing. We do the same thing when we get shaken up, when we get disquieted by something, because we in flesh. We subject to those things to happen. We're gonna look at something over here in 2nd Esdras. Let's look at something. Show you what I'm saying with that. Let's go to 2nd Esdras, chapter 7. 2nd Esdras, chapter 7. And he said in verse 15, it says what? It says, now therefore, why disquietest thou thyself? Why troublest thyself, seeing that thou art in your perfection of beauty, but a corruptible man? And why art in your perfection and beauty moved? Whereas thou in your perfection and beauty, but mortal. We're just mortal. We flesh. We're going to go through things. We're going to face struggles and challenges, but we shouldn't allow those things to get us shaken up and troubled by the things that we face or the things that we even encounter. See, the only reason those things happen, the only reason we get shaken up, we get troubled, we be all discombobulated, we be all over the place, because we putting our trust in our own power. When our strength faileth, because it's weak. So why do we put our trust in it? That's the whole point. When we got all this stuff going on, why are we all troubled and all over the place? It should make us realize that our trust should be in JEHOVAH, because he is our strength. Because if we are truly rooted and grounded in faith in him, then we wouldn't worry about these troubles and the things around us, allowing the pressures of life, allowing ourselves to get unsettled and shaken in spirit. See, it doesn't matter how great we are in the world or how much work that we do. See, our own carnal efforts would never get us anywhere. We always going to have these problems. We always going to have these issues. It don't matter. If we don't surrender ourselves to JEHOVAH, then we always going to have issues. See, that's why we was put in flesh. We was put in flesh so we can recognize where our faith should lie. We should be able to recognize our limitations so we can become dependent on the Spirit to humble us. That's the whole point. So we have to be able to recognize our feebleness. We have to be able to understand that. That's why he said, Lord, make me to know my end, the measure of my days, what it is, that I may know how frail, how feeble I am. So we have to be able to recognize our feebleness. We have to be able to recognize our weaknesses, our frailty. See, even just as you can have these little worms and caterpillars that we see crawling around, we could easily just go out there and step on one of them and crush them easily under our foot like it's nothing. It would be wrong to do it, but people could easily do that. But when you look at that, when you realize what's going on, see, that's how we look to JEHOVAH. We just as that little ant. We just as that little worm or that caterpillar that's just trying to survive. So without his protection and his guidance, we weak. We're frail. We're feeble. We're going to be susceptible to all the dangers that's going to come around us. So this is why we have to be able to humble ourselves down enough to recognize that and truly understand the position that we are in. Psalms 39:5. He says, remember, behold, thou hast made my days as an handbreadth, and my age is as nothing before thee. Verily, every man, every male and female, at his best state is altogether vanity. So we need to think about this. We need to consider this. This is why I say, a lot of us, we're going to have the problem because we're not going to want to recognize this. See, even in our best state, even in our best condition or frame, it's still vanity because it's all going to pass away. See, we could have the most beautiful appearances and looks, but even in that, all of it is going to fade away. So if that's where our trust is and our confidence was, then what are we going to do when it actually goes away? You have people who are millionaires, billionaires, flourishing careers, prospering this life. All of that will eventually fade away. That's why when you have those that are full of riches and they lose all of it, a lot of people, they get depressed. They lose all their hope. Why? Because our trust was in the wrong thing. You can look at these sports stars, athletes. Eventually, you're going to get older. Now you're not able to perform like you used to. Now you got to retire. Now all the fame, all the reputation, all the renown, guess what? All of that goes away because it's temporary. It's all vanity. Because in the end, it will mean nothing. Every man at his best state is altogether vanity. Everything that we can do, accomplish in this life, all of our ambitions, goals, achievements, all the things eventually come to an end. But the whole point is for us to understand that this life and the lifestyles that we can live in this world, anything that we accomplish and achieve and become great in this life, it's only for a moment in time. In the end, it's still all vanity. In the end, it's still all going to amount to nothing. So this is what we have to understand. These are the things that we have to consider, and these are the things we have to understand. So we're going to go somewhere. We're going to go to Ecclesiastes. Let's go to Ecclesiastes. Yeah, I'm going to tell you, because this time done caught me, so I'm just going to finish out this last part, and then I'm going to have to end this teaching and then pick this up because, yep, it done caught up to me. So we're going to go to Ecclesiastes chapter 2. We're going to hit 3 down to 11. Ecclesiastes chapter 2. 3 down to 11. And it says, I sought in my heart to give myself unto wine, yet acquainting my heart with wisdom, and to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was that good for the sons of men, which they should do under the heaven all the days of their life. What should you say? Verse 4. It says, I made me great works. I builded me houses. I planted me vineyards. I made me gardens and orchards, and I planted trees in them of all kinds of fruits, all kinds of works. I made me pools of water to water therewith the wood that bringeth forth trees. I got me servants and maidens, and had servants born in my house. Also, I had great possessions of great and small cattle above all that were in Jerusalem before me. I gathered me also silver and gold, and a peculiar treasure of kings of the provinces. I got me men singers and women singers, and the delights of the sons of men, as musical instruments, and that of all sorts. So I was great, and increased more than all that were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me, and whatsoever my eyes desired, my understanding desired, I kept not from them. I withheld not my heart from any joy, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my portion of all my labor. Then I looked on all the works that my powers had wrought, and on the labor that I had labored to do, and behold, remember, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. So we see that. All these works. So we see even here from Solomon, everything he built. He telling it to us himself. Everything he accomplished. Now notice, you see all these I. We see all that. I made this, I made that, I did this, I did that. In the end, all of these things, all these works, was vanity, vexation of spirit. There was no profit under the sun. Why? Because it doesn't matter what we do and accomplish in our labors and in our works here. Our own efforts and things that we seek to desire to do. These things eventually come to an end. So we have to understand that everything comes from JEHOVAH. See, JEHOVAH, he grants us the ability to get things and to do things and to accomplish things even here in this life. But at the same time, we must realize that all those things will still be taken away. So understand that we need to be content with what we have. But we truly need to seek those spiritual riches, not those temporary pleasures of the things here. So I'm gonna pull this last one in Matthew. I'm gonna hit Matthew chapter 6. I'm gonna make this last point and then we gonna finish it out. So I'm gonna hit Matthew chapter 6. We're gonna hit verse 19 through 21. He tells right here, it says, lay not up for yourselves treasures. So don't lay up for yourselves wealth and riches upon earth, where moth, so where the corruption and the decay and the rust do corrupt, where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures, wealth and riches in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doeth corrupt, where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will be your heart also, will be your desire also. So this is the point. So we have to be able to make this shift in our mindset. We have to be able to make this transition. We have to be able to transition from one glory to another, from glory in the flesh to glory in the spirit. We have to be able to recognize our limitations and our mortality being in this flesh, recognizing that we are frail and weak, that the riches and the prosperity of this world can only get us but so far, because all that's in the world is going to end. The glory of man comes to an end, because all those works profit nothing. They're vanity. They're worthless. We need to understand that, but recognizing where our true worth is. We have to have a change in our hearts, in our desires of our mind, to truly understand that our true wealth, our true riches, our true abundance is in our faith in JEHOVAH, who grants us those true riches, those blessings of knowledge, that wisdom, that understanding that can never fade away. See, if we put all our trust and our faith in JEHOVAH, and that's who we hold to, and not this flesh, and we surrender ourselves unto him, then we can truly see and appreciate the things that he has granted unto us. Though our flesh be temporary and will pass away, the things that we can accomplish in this life will eventually come to nothing. We can't take nothing with us. But our true accomplishment is in serving God with all our heart, all our mind, and all our soul, providing we stay true to him. Then we can gain something greater. Those true riches, which can never be lost, that will stick with us forever. So with that, I'm gonna have to end the teaching right here. I mean, yeah, I had a lot more notes on what I had, but hey, we can always pick it up next week. Yeah. So with that, hopefully we got some understanding from this lesson. Hopefully we got some understanding of what's going on, what this flesh is about, and what we should be understanding about the flesh, and how we understand we should be able to recognize our limitations, and how we should have dependency on JEHOVAH in all things. We shouldn't be glorifying our flesh. We shouldn't be exalting our flesh. We shouldn't be praising our flesh. We shouldn't be seeking to entertain our flesh or preserve our flesh. None of those. It's not about that, but it's about truly recognizing who we truly serve, which is JEHOVAH. We should be serving him in spirit and in truth, and cleansing our hearts and our desires to be pure and holy to JEHOVAH. So with that, yeah, we'll pick this up next week. So with that, hopefully we got some understanding in this teaching, and I appreciate everyone for, coming out and tuning in with me in this lesson. This was Deacon Ernest James with the King James Bible University, and I would like to say, Shalom.